So James, you can go ahead with your first question.
Sure. So tell us a bit about yourself, Miss Haswell.
A little bit about myself. Well, I was born and raised in Owen Sound, and I was born in 1960, so you can do the math quickly. Um, and and I went to Ryerson School. I went to Strathcona for senior public, and then I went to the OSCVI, which the building is not there, but the school. Then I went off to after OSCVI, I went off to Georgian or Conestoga College in Kitchener, and I actually studied social services and became a social worker. But I never practiced the trade or was employed in that position. So I went on to become a partner. I got a job at the Rocking Horse, and basically, as things turned out, I became both a business partner and a life partner of the owner at the time. And Diane and I are still together after a long time, 40, almost 40 years. So yeah, and I got really interested in politics when I was in my early 20s.
So why, when you first ran for city council,
Yeah.
why did you decide to run?
That's a really good question. I was thinking, sort of anticipating that question. And I honestly ran because I was really distraught and disillusioned with the council of the day in Owen Sound and the state of the downtown. And, now looking back, I realize we're almost in that state again. Where there were so many vacancies. The downtown, it was looking really just derelict. And I just felt that they weren't paying enough attention to not just the downtown, but to small businesses. And small businesses where about 50% of the population of Owen Sound at the time were employed in small businesses. So I wasn't alone in that. And interestingly enough, I was actually working on a mayoral campaign for a candidate I was backing at the time. And in a meeting, we were talking about strategies, and I started talking about an idea. And his campaign manager looked at me and said, "Why don't you run for council?" And it had not really occurred to me at that point. So I decided to pay attention to the whole process for that particular term. And back then, the terms were only, can't recall if they're 2 or 3 years, but anyway, they're very short. So yeah, I paid attention very closely to the whole process. And then the next time I decided to run because things hadn't changed that much.
And do you think you were able to see at least some change in your time as a city councilor?
Yeah, I have a lot of, it was really amazing to be a part of so many great decisions. I co-chaired the Big Dig, which was at that time was the largest capital project in the history of Owen Sound. And that was an amazing time. So many people came together. And I have to say, there's a real benefit to being naive and young and new. Such a benefit because you're so focused and you're sort of straight ahead, damn the torpedoes, and you don't even notice the opposition. You're right. You're going to do it. This is happening, and that's how I did it. And we had a great time doing it. If you can imagine, from just about the Metro store to City Hall being completely ripped out. Absolutely no people or traffic could travel down there. It was a hole for 2 solid months. And I was so excited about this. And I think there were 2 camps, people that were really excited and people that were really angry with me. But we
Just
got it
so
done.
the non-Owen Sound people are aware, that's like a pretty substantial part of our town. Like it's a
Yeah.
pretty large area.
Yeah, it was huge. It was huge. And it was from one side of the buildings on one side of the street. So the east side to the west side of the street, from building to building, it was just dug right out. And you could see, they were tearing out all these old, like literally wooden pipes. I mean, the whole motivation for this was the infrastructure underneath the ground. There were wooden pipes. There was actually brick joints where there were couplings that were made out of like steel and brick, and it was just ancient. It was over 100 years old, the stuff under the surface. So anyway, we got that fixed and prettied up. The most of the money was spent under the ground. The little bit of money that was budgeted, we spent on new light fixtures and the stuff you see.
Yeah.
So that was an amazing thing to be part of. And I suppose one other major event, I mean, there's just so many, I could really go on and on, but the wastewater treatment plant, it's probably the least sexy of anything I've ever been involved in, but the most environmentally responsible. We were, until 2012, I think it was, we were dumping essentially raw sewage into Georgian Bay forever. And I just, it it was something I wasn't particularly proud of in my position as mayor. And I wanted to affect a change there. And fortunately, I had a council that was very supportive of environmental initiatives. And they recognized that. And so that was then again, and it's still, there's been no other project that's surpassed the value of that today. So that is the largest capital project in the history of the city, the wastewater treatment plant. It was huge, and the legacy will live on forever. Every time you flush.
So as a small business owner, can you tell us a bit about your experience doing that?
Yeah, I loved being in business. I loved it. It was a passion. It was where, it was just, it was, when I was mayor, it was very, very difficult because I was very available to people. So I didn't have that sort of frontline person that could take my calls and so on. So I was very on the street. I was out there, I was open, and everybody could get to me very easily. So I found that a bit frustrating because people would come into the store and want to talk about, the garbage pickup or some more serious issue, parking, something like that. Those are the types of issues that come up on a daily basis that sort of can really drive you around the bend. I was always more interested in the higher level issues and the broader, bigger thinking, I'd like to say. But I enjoyed it very much, and I love being in business. It was fun. I got to meet all these kids, and literally from when they were born until they grew up, and then they had children. So we were working on grandchildren of our original customers. So it was awesome. And we sold toys for a living. So how could what can I say? How lucky am I? It was amazing.
And do you think your experience as a mayor or experience as a city councilor and your experience as a small business owner worked well together?
Oh, very much so. Yeah. Something is what you learn in small business and in any business is you never burn bridges, especially when you're in a community the size of this area, not just Owen Sound, but Owen Sound and Grey and Bruce counties. So you never burn bridges. So you would have, business relationships with hundreds and hundreds of people and organizations. And, you'd be wanting to maybe sell something major, and they would say no. Well, you would still keep that relationship, obviously, because it could be a future time. So that was a really important learning to take from being an entrepreneur in business into politics. Same thing in politics. You never burn your bridges in politics. One thing I was never a big proponent of, which a lot of people in politics are, is what's that expression? Oh, to keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Well, I've never really subscribed to that because it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, it seems dishonest. So I just never really subscribed to that. And perhaps if I had, I'd still be in politics.
So
Oh,
looking at, oh, Paul, no, you go.
okay, thank you. Sorry about that, James. What was like
Not
the
a problem.
driving factor between being a city councilor and taking that additional step into becoming mayor? What was the huge thing that made you decide to run?
Right. That's a complicated question, but I'll come up with there were a couple of different factors at the time. At the time, I had been on council for about 13 years. I'd also been acting, I was deputy mayor for 4 of those years. And it's kind of, if you can imagine yourself with if you have a younger sibling, and your younger sibling, you know how to drive a car, but your younger sibling doesn't really know how to drive a car, and you have to go out with them and they're in the driver's seat and you just are chomping at the bit to get them out of the driver's seat so that you can drive the way you know how. I can't describe it any more accurately than that. I felt that I had some stronger negotiating skills than the person who was in the position at the time. And I had been at many, many meetings with the province particularly. And I was not impressed with my predecessors' tact. And I didn't believe that we were getting our fair share from the province. And so that's really why I stepped up, was I really didn't believe that Owen Sound specifically was getting its fair share of funding and its fair share of attention from the province when it came to economic development, and particularly internet connectivity.
Thank you.
Yeah. So,
You're
I had a question and then it left my
Yeah.
mind. Give me a second.
welcome.
Do you have any questions, Tyler?
Sure,
Yeah, I do. Sorry, Paul. I was going to ask, is it difficult for not just you, but everybody in council to run when you know everybody in the city or the town?
I think it's easier because, you're a known entity. And so, your friends sort of know who you are, and your friends of your friends. And it's a very, I think it makes it easier, Tyler. What is difficult is if you come across an issue and you have a friend or a family member that feels very strongly about it, and you're on opposing, you're in opposition. That can be tricky. And that did happen. That happened with a very good friend of mine. We are still good friends, but we had to really, really talk it out. And so, yeah, it can be awkward, but it does make it easier to get elected.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you get it back, James?
Yeah, but do you want to ask your question?
All yours. I don't want you to lose your train again.
Okay.
Choo-choo.
So in the situation we're in with COVID and like the small businesses being basically gutted, what do you think are some things that the province and like city councils can actually do to help rebuild our
Sure.
main streets?
Sure. Yeah. Really, I think it's going to take a lot. I think right now there's a couple of really good programs. There's one called Digital Main Street, which I've been a proponent of for about 6 years, and it's a program funded by the province of Ontario, and it's delivered by the Ontario Business Improvement Area Board. And so it's all downtowns all across Ontario have these business organizations, and they're called BIAs. In Owen Sound, it's called the DIA. Not sure why, it just is. And needless to say, I've been pushing and pushing the city, even since not being in politics, to get involved with this digital Main Street program. It's fantastic. They actually give small mom and pop businesses that are located in a downtown area a grant. And the grant is to get them online so that they can build an online presence. And it gives them the tools in terms of, FaceTime with experts in social media and how to tap into that as a sales force, and also how to build an online store. So finally, just last year, I was able to at least affect some of the DIA board members, and they bought into it. And so now I think at City Hall, I think they have a person there now who actually does engage with small businesses downtown. So I think it's going to take like a multi-level approach. And I know that the city has, and to their credit, the city has engaged a marketing company, and it's the same marketing company that promoted Tobermory. And I mean, they did a great job with Tobermory. If you want to consider that it's now completely overrun with people all the time, that is why they were hired, and they did a good job. So I think, they're on the right track, hiring this marketing company and doing a lot more social media stuff. Yeah, it's going to take a multi-level approach, I think. And each business owner is going to have to continue to be creative in their own approach to how they do things. And it's pretty exciting. I follow a lot of the small businesses in town on Instagram, and it's pretty exciting what they're doing. They're all doing something really unique. They're all doing something fun. I mean, the sign wars thing, there's all kinds of different things, and they're engaged and they're doing it. And I think that's the beauty of when you own your own business, is you're pretty scrappy. And if that's what you're doing to feed yourself and or your family and keep a roof over your head, it's incredible how creative you can get.
So did you or do you have any political aspirations above just the mayoral office, like provincial politics or federal politics?
I did at one time. I would never close the door on those opportunities. Sort of coming into the age where it seems like that's what people do. You have to be over 60, apparently. I don't know. But in all seriousness, I haven't closed the door on it, Paul. I was approached by both the provincial Liberals and the provincial Conservative Party in the last 15 years, one more recently than the other. But just, you've really got to have the passion. And as I always say, you've got to have the jam for the job. And I don't know. Yeah, I really enjoyed serving the community. I was chair of Habitat for Humanity for the last 7 years. I'm now the president of the Georgian Bay Folk Society. So we can, bring summer folk back in some renewed form. So I'm not going to say no to anything, but I'm also not running, looking for anything either. Yeah.
So leading off that, why do you think you're approached by both the Liberals and the Conservatives?
Well, I mean, the only thing is, they just look at people who they think either take one for the team and lose for them, or take one for the team and win for them. And partisan politics is a whole other ballgame, and it's something that I'm fascinated by and I'm interested in, but I just wasn't prepared to lose for the team. And And I wasn't really that keen when the Conservatives asked me to campaign that hard back when Murdoch decided not to run again. It was going to be a real competition with Bill Walker. He was really he wanted it so bad he could taste it, right? And I didn't. So you've got to be like that. You have to be just ravenous to get it. And I wasn't, so I wasn't about to put myself out there. And for the Liberals, I just didn't see this riding going in that direction, and I didn't want to put myself out there and lose. It's not fun. Winning is fun. When you win 5 elections and then you lose 1, why do you always remember the one you lost?
My dad's the same way. It's 17 years. I'm about as old as his political career.
Yeah.
He only really remembers the night he lost.
It's so bizarre because the wins are amazing and epic. And like your dad, you remember oh yeah, I lost, right? Nobody came. It's really, I think it's human nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where do you want to see, what would you want to see in the future for like city politics in Owen Sound or just in general? What do you think is a good stepping place for the future?
Oh, I think, unfortunately, they have not made any headway at all on actually costing out what a more regional government would look like. I think right now that there's so much duplication. It's staggering how much duplication there is. When you guys were all just, little tiny kids, maybe not even born, they did this whole I forget what it was a buzzword at the time. I can't recall, but what they did was they said to all these municipalities, mostly townships, okay, there's too many townships, there's too many counties. We need you to amalgamate. That's what it was, amalgamation. Well, it was supposed to save a ton of money. All everybody did was amalgamate, go build new town halls, keep their old town halls, and put up new signs and get new letterhead. But nothing really changed. And so, what we were working towards, and I still believe, if you don't know the answer to the question, how can you say no? Nobody has done a costing. So nobody has actually said, what would it look like if Owen Sound, Chatsworth, Meaford, Georgian Bluffs, let's just say the 4 of those. What if they all came together as one municipality with one fire department, with one community-based policing agency, with one city hall, with one elected council, not 4 elected councils, not 4 town halls, not 4 engineering departments, not 4 garbage pickup fleets. Like, what would it look like? Cost it out. It's not rocket science. It's not rocket science. You could do this. Anybody with a calculator and a mind towards municipal business and how a municipality runs could do it. So we were so close 7 years ago to having that done. The mayor of Chatsworth, Mayor of Meaford, the mayor of Georgian Bluffs, and myself, we had all had a lot of conversation about it. We were going to all go back to our councils. We were going to convince our councils to throw in a certain amount of money per capita to hire consultants to get the information. Well, that went the way of the election. So I still think you have to get the answer to the question. There's so much duplication. It's staggering. The money that is wasted it's absolutely obscene how much money is wasted. I don't even understand how you could be an elected official in Grey County today and not be on about that, because it's staggering how much money is wasted.
So
So
just
that's where I think
oh,
we need to go.
well, just to get on that, I live in the city of Greater Sudbury, and that's exactly what we did. We had Chelmsford Valley, like all these small communities,
Hmm.
and we came as one, and it worked out good for us. So
Sure.
so why do you think then? Because like other people did it and it worked, so why do you think there's some hesitation?
Well, I'll tell you, there's a lot of, I think change is hard for people. And I think that change, let's face it, there would be jobs would be shifted. Um, there would be politicians would be out of office, because there would be a general election that the rural politicians would, rightly or wrongly, I don't know, would say, well, gee, the people that live in, the urban centers, they're going to be more well known, so they're going to get the votes. So all of our rural areas are going to be run by urban people. Well, I don't know about you, but the last time I looked at Owen Sound, Meaford, or Chatsworth, I wouldn't exactly call us metropolitan urban. I think most of us have connections and roots to the rural areas, so we're not so removed. It's just a conversation that has never seriously happened. And unless you look at the facts, at the end of the day, the answer might be no, there's no savings. It wouldn't be more efficient. Or it could be the extreme opposite. But the point I'm trying to make is that we don't know. So you can't just say, no, let's not find out. That seems rather absurd to me.
Yeah.
I guess I'll ask. So what would you say the relationship between the province and the municipalities are, like when you
Mhm.
were in office?
Mhm. I was really involved on a provincial level with the, I was fortunate enough, because of the length of time I was in office, I worked with the Conservative government, the Mike Harris days, and then the Dalton McGuinty days, and the Kathleen Wynne days. So I sort of, worked with three different governments. And I have to say that the relationship is that essentially a municipality is the sort of child, if you will, of the province. And the province has an act. It's called the Municipal Act. And although I know there have been changes in the last 7 years, so I don't want to speak too closely to it in detail. But at the time I was involved, the Municipal Act dictated, for example, a municipality could never run a deficit. So we always had to have a balanced budget. There were no natural person powers, so we weren't able to. It did change, but at the beginning of my tenure, we weren't able to, for example, own or run a little business. We were able then to do that as time went on. So I was involved with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, which is a group of politicians and senior municipal staff who are elected by their peers across Ontario. And at that time, there were 456 municipalities. And I was one of the representatives for the small urban sector of the province of Ontario. And so I was very fortunate that I was able to sit at a lot of tables at Queen's Park and advocate on behalf of small urban municipalities across the province, to again ensure that we got our fair share, because everybody always says small town Ontario is the backbone of Ontario, yeah. But they're never there when we need a decent hospital or or a road so it was sort of just holding them to that mantra that they would spout out. And that's what my role was. And fortunately, I was a president of the Ontario Small Urban Association. So that was another great fun opportunity that I did for a few years. So, yeah.
So you had two.
The relationship needs to be strong. Sorry, Paul. I just want to finish that off. The relationship between the province and municipality needs to be strong, and it needs to be the communication needs to be very open. And you use your MPP for that a lot. Your MPP and at the federal level, your MP. And that's what I did like. I really enjoyed about municipal politics is that it is not to be partisan. So, for example, I was appointed to the Naturopathic Council of the College of Naturopathic Medicine. And I had to appear before an all parties committee. So it's NDP, it's the Conservatives, and it's a Liberal. And you go into this great big boardroom and they all grill you because they want to make sure that you don't have a particular partisan agenda, right? If they're appointing you as a member of the public at large, and I came from such a long history of municipal politics, they all grilled me, and it was great because the one guy, and I don't even know what party he was from, but he said, well, Deb, he said, I don't think we have any trouble with you. He said, I was in municipal politics for a long time too. And he said, the fact that you're still on your feet, what did he say? The fact that you're still on your feet, and you've been friends to every one of us around this room, I think you've got no trouble getting my vote. So it's tricky in municipal politics not to be partisan, but I loved it. That's enough.
So you mentioned that you can't run a deficit, and then you also mentioned that you had two big projects. So what was the challenge, like the main challenges and the solutions you came up with to have two huge projects without going into a deficit?
Sure. Well, obviously the big dig, that was way back. So we had, it was the first tripartite, it was called a tripartite funding. So it was municipal funding, provincial funding, and federal funding. So we had a third, a third, a third. So the city had a third of the money, the province a third, and the federal government a third. And that was a long time ago. I mean, we're talking, before you guys were born. I mean, it's like 20 years ago now, I think. And at that time, the federal member for this area, for our riding, was Owen Jackson, who was a former Owen Sound mayor. And I was on council at the time, and I was very involved with the Ontario Small Urban Group and the Ontario Municipal Association. And fortunately, myself, president of the association, and Owen Jackson, our MP, we negotiated the basics of that agreement, so that for the first time in the history of the province of Ontario, there were 3 levels of funding coming together on one project. And that was a really big deal at the time. And it's continued on, and it's now entrenched with every party. There's always tripartite funding now for things. So you beg, you borrow, you steal. No, you don't steal. You don't steal. You beg and you borrow.
I know that James mentioned that his father used to say that municipal politics was much more dirtier than provincial or federal. Do you kind of agree with that?
Oh, politics at any level is a blood sport. And yeah, it's not for the faint of heart. And you have to always have your eye on the long game. It's the long game. So you win little battles. You never really totally win the war, but you win little battles along the way. And So I agree with him. And David and I were on council for a long time together, and he was one of my closest allies. He and another counselor, they were the only two people that I really was comfortable saying I can trust, and always get, the real deal. It's like, yeah, you're right on, or no, you're right out to lunch. And there was no kind of game around it. It was just factual. And that's a very special thing to have in politics. Is just a couple of allies. That's all you need.
I'd also ask, I know in my city at least, Belleville, it's very much conservative, and it takes a very long time to get something new done. I know that
Yes.
Some of our projects took 3 years of debating, but would you say it's kind of the same in almost every city or town?
Well, right now, yes. I think so. I think smaller communities are very change averse. So there's always that push and pull of wanting to grow the community and retain young people, at the same time wanting to keep the small town charm and the heritage architecture and the flavor of the community, which is why we live where we live. So it's, I think it's very similar in all communities. Actually, I used to know a woman named Kay Manderville, who was on council for years and years in Belleville. And she was a real force for Belleville. Yeah. Yeah. It's a really neat city. So Sudbury. Yeah. Great places.
So you mentioned how important it is to try and keep youth in the community. It is after all a youth parliament that we run. So how important do you think it is to have youth involved in politics?
Oh, I think it's vital. I think that one of my favorite things used to be is going out, doing exactly what I'm doing right now. Going out and speaking in classrooms, meeting with young people, engaging young people on committees. So, I always think that, I know on Board of Educations, they have a youth person on Board of Educations, like a student trustee. I think that's super important, as long as it's not just a figurehead sort of thing and just a badge. As long as that student trustee has a real voice, a real vote, and a real say, I think it's vitally important. I mean, it's the future, right? It's the future. And you should always be thinking about the future, not just today. It's not all about garbage day.
So Owen sounds a pretty aging community, but we've been growing a tiny bit with like immigration, and a lot of like refugees. Do you think that's something that's going to be very like important in the future of Owen Sound, where a lot of newer Canadians are coming to our communities?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this community in particular, James, has been built on immigration forever. I mean, there was the huge Dutch immigration that came after World War II. There was a huge Polish influx. We had a Polish training camp for the army, for soldiers in Owen Sound, just pre and during World War II. Those families are still, the names are still here. So, those refugees, yes. It's funny, I take my computer to a guy, he and his family are refugees. They're Syrian refugees. He's probably the sharpest, well, he's not probably, I think he's the smartest computer guy in town. You can take any computer to this guy and it's amazing what he can do. And they lived in a refugee camp for years and came to Canada, came to Owen Sound, And he's created a business. He has 2 employees. He employs himself. I mean, the whole, not just Owen Sound, the whole country's built on immigration. We have to have new Canadians, because I don't know about you, but not a lot of people are having a lot of babies anymore. Like those 6 and 7 child families are very few and far between. So if we're not going to grow the population, through, just procreation, we've got to bring new people in, and that'll drive the economy.
So going on the young people and new people, how do we, or at least smaller communities, get young people to come out to the smaller towns and cities?
Yeah, I'm wondering, and I might throw this back to you, because I'm thinking that maybe the global pandemic will actually be a bit of a motivator in that regard, because you guys you don't know what it's like to not have the internet, or I mean, think about it. When I first got on council, there wasn't a computer at City Hall. It's really quite hilarious. So I think that the global pandemic has created just a whole new way of approaching things, and people aren't working in their offices as much. They're doing more remote work. They're doing this. I don't know that this is the only way to live. I don't think it is. However, I think it's changing where people can live to do the work they want to do. I know one woman in Owen Sound. She's the executive assistant to a senator in Ottawa, and she hasn't been to Ottawa for the duration of the pandemic. And she lives in Owen Sound, and she talks to her boss every day, and she gets her work done. So, I think that this may affect some really positive change in that regard. And look at real estate prices, right? People are moving out of large cities. I think, eventually they'll all move back into the large cities to a degree, because the real estate will maybe go down a bit. But I think we're in, these are epic times. They really are.
So do you think, like, the pandemic opened up a wave of opportunities for us? Like, we probably wouldn't have youth parliament if there was no pandemic. So do you think maybe that technology will help continue having these opportunities for people? Like, maybe we can still have meetings virtually, where we would have never thought of this before the pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. Who heard of Zoom before the pandemic? Meh. Right. And now you use it as a verb. Right? Like, it's, we Zoom. Oh, let's just Zoom. Right? Like,
I feel bad
it
for
is.
FaceTime or Skype, though.
Huge. Pardon me?
I feel bad for FaceTime and Skype. They were so developed, and then they just vanished.
I know. Well, some of us still, I think FaceTime to me seems a more sort of, you do that with your friends or your family, I think. At least that's what we do. We FaceTime, and there's like the house party app, and I know my daughter and son-in-law, and all their friends, they gather on house party all the time, because we do need to connect. So I think it's maybe sped up the opportunities for youth to be engaged, and your tools are technology, and all the technology that exists. Back when when my grandparents were your age, their tools were physical. So it was gears and more physical tools, whereas your tools are more intellectual. And well, there's still physical tools. I'm not underplaying that by any means. But technology has touched every area, so that now if you're looking at being a crane operator, I mean, it involves an incredible amount of math, where you're doing sine and cosine and figuring out all kinds of information that 50 years ago, it was eyeballing and just, making sure the levels were right. And so it's the evolution of everything. It's just sped everything up, I think. I think you guys have the world by the tail. I really do. I think you've got just tons of opportunity. There's all kinds of, there's so much unexplored everything out there that it's exciting. And you're very, very lucky. And you're smart.
Well, thank you
did
for
you have a question?
Smart. Would you say that more young people are getting into politics now than when you were younger?
It seems to be, but then again, I'm not much older. So really, a lot of people are younger than I am now. So it seems that a lot of younger people, yes, are. Yeah, it wasn't really kind of a cool thing to do back in my 20s. It was maybe not the coolest thing to do, but it was what I wanted to do. So I really encourage people to get involved. I mean, you can be an armchair quarterback, or you can just get in there and really make some change happen. And I just think if you've got a passion for it and you're interested, that you just get involved, and you can make a change. One person can make a big difference. And when you get a group of people that want to do something positive for a community, whether it's something small or something really, massive, it makes a difference in people's lives. Municipal politics, you can change somebody's life overnight. And I a little bit tongue in cheek about garbage day, but what other level of government can change your garbage day just like that? Change your life.
So I have a tiny bit of a weird question, but what do you think are some things that municipal governments can do to deal with, the environment? You talked a bit about the wastewater treatment plant. What are some other initiatives you'd like to see, municipal governments or even Owen Sound take in the future to help protect their environment?
Sure. Well, one thing would be when we use public transit, to have emission-free vehicles doing our public transit. We live in a pretty small community. I think our transit system could be revisited and rejigged to be more efficient, less of a greenhouse gas contributor. These big diesel things just running all the time, and I think that's one small way. I also think that encouraging, and the city does this now, and I think continuing to do restricted watering in the summertime, so that people aren't just watering their lawns every single day. Keep that on a rotation. I think we need to go to green bins at some point, which is organic waste in Owen Sound. Just for Paul and Tyler, in Owen Sound, you can't dispose of your organic waste at the curbside. So we're still, throwing out into the garbage stream all of our kitchen waste. And I think that there's, I think we're a bit late in the game on that one. I think that should be front and center soon. And I think repurposing and reusing heritage buildings needs to be more of a thrust and a focus. rather than tearing them down and building new ones that arguably aren't going to last 200 years. So I think that's important too. I think looking at everything through an environmental lens would be a start.
Yeah, so speaking of that, like some of the things that we've talked about just like bewilder me coming from a different municipality. Like we've had green bins for ages. So would you like, do you think that, like, I'm pretty rural too, but would you say that maybe Owen Sound is like uniquely hesitant to change?
I don't know why they haven't gone with green bins. I really don't. I mean, well, yeah, let me back up. What they will say is it's too expensive. And I don't know, I couldn't tell you at this point, what the cost of the program is, but is it so expensive that it's worth continuing to pay a huge contracting company to take all of our garbage in a truck and drive it down to London? Used to go to Michigan, now it goes to London, Ontario, somewhere around there, and dump it in a landfill. Like I just don't get the rationale around it, why we haven't just done it. Why wouldn't we send less garbage in a truck down the highway to the landfill? I don't know. I think that if you look at everything through an environmental lens and you do a cost benefit analysis and the impact on the environment, at the end of the day, if we're talking about wanting young people to stay in our communities, we better smarten up when it comes to looking at how we handle environmental issues. I think municipalities are really late in the game on that.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah. Do you have one, Tyler?
No, I was just.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to ask. So I'm a big reader. I like reading sort of like old-timey books. I'm reading The Rights of Man right now. So I just wanted to ask, like, do you enjoy reading? And if so, like, what's your favorite type of genre and what's your favorite book?
I love reading about politics. I really enjoy biographies. I really enjoy biographies about politicians. I enjoy biographies about activists. I've never been an activist. I've always been a politician, and there's a distinct difference. Sometimes there's activist politicians, but that wasn't me. I wasn't an activist. I was a politician. And my favorite book, oh, wow, that is hard. My favorite book is, wow, I don't know that I could narrow it down to one. I'll tell you, I really enjoyed reading,
Top
You've
3?
got me.
Top 3?
You've completely got me. Oh, well, I loved reading the story of yeah, look at me, I'm blanking. I'm totally blanking on you. I know how to read.
We're asking the tough questions here.
Isn't
all these complex questions about municipal politics, you're on the dot, and then we ask, what's your favorite book? And you just blank out.
Totally. Oh my gosh. Oh, American Dirt. That's a pretty good one. Have you read that? American Dirt?
No. I always like to ask that question because then I
Mexican. Yeah. It's a very controversial book written by a white American about the Mexican condition and the story around being an illegal immigrant into the US. So that is a very, very cool book. And I also really enjoyed reading about Malala Yousafzai, who was a young Muslim girl about 15 years ago. She was advocating for young girls to go to school, and the the Taliban shot her in the head. And she actually survived that. And she's gone on to be, I think she has her PhD now, and she's quite an advocate. And I really admire people who take those kinds of huge, life, they're life-threatening moves to for the betterment of other people. It's not just about them, it's about others and lifting people up. So those are the kinds of stories I really enjoy reading, and I kind of get lost in those. And I really enjoyed reading about Bobby Orr. Bobby Orr is an old hockey player, and when I was a kid, I really liked the Boston Bruins. And Bobby Orr I was a huge fan, and as it turns out, he's a real advocate for fair play in hockey and teaching kids that hockey is a good game and it's a fun game. And he takes all the bad out of it and just makes it fun. He's a neat guy.
Yeah, I was looking back in my little bookshelf there. I have a biography somewhere of him, but I couldn't see it on my shelf.
Yeah. Really neat.
I always love to ask that question because I'm always looking for book recommendations and things people like, and usually they're really awesome books.
Good.
So
Can't believe I gapped out.
No worries. Do you have any questions for us?
So the young parliamentarians, tell me about your group. Like, who are you?
Sure. So I'm the president right now for Youth Farming Canada. I wasn't the founder. Wyatt, who's actually 12 years old, started this all on his own.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
And it's like we get together once every 2 weeks, and we have sort of a mock parliament session where we debate legislation. James is always really good. He kills me though.
Wow.
He drafts like 2 million pages of bills, and it's a lot, but he's good.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And
do you need other speakers too? Because I can give you the name James. I can give you Kaylee Levac. She's a senior. She's in Ottawa, and she writes legislation.
That'd be awesome.
I think she may be a deputy minister now.
How do you spell her name?
Levac. Kaylee. I don't know how to. Kali, and then Levac is Levesque. Sorry, Paul. I didn't mean to jut in there. It just popped into my mind, and I didn't want to lose that.
Oh yeah, she's assistant deputy minister, medical countermeasures, COVID-19 task force, Health Canada.
There you go.
That's
and
awesome.
She's a friend of mine. If you're interested, I can reach out. Well, her parents are more so friends of mine, and your dad knows Dale as well. But if you're interested, and also if you were ever interested in having the senator that I mentioned, Anne Marie, who lives in Owen Sound, works with, I could always get Anne Marie to make that happen too.
Yeah, we'd love to.
Awesome.
We're always looking for speakers.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, it's great. It's so exciting to see people, like young people, involved. It's wonderful.
Our youngest member is 8 years old.
I love it. That's so cool.
Yeah,
he's so cool.
He's actually a very, very good speaker and debater as well. Like, you'd be surprised.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah,
very cool.
But yeah, it's basically just like a mock parliament. Like, we're different parties, we debate on things, we vote on bills, and then we.
So how do people find out about you?
Oh, well, it used to be so what Wyatt did was he sort of organized it and then told all his friends to put it on Instagram, and then we all sort of stumbled upon it. And now,
Okay.
then when I sort of took over, I made an Instagram account. We have a YouTube, which is where these go, and everything like that. So we have an Instagram account where
Cool.
we sort of try and get people to reach out. And James is really awesome because we had a non-existent NDP, and then he like tripled the size of the NDP, and now they're the party that always gets government. James is a really solid
That's
member of
awesome.
our team.
I am good at hashtags apparently, and getting people to look at those hashtags.
That's great.
Yeah.
He
Right
showed up for
on.
one session and then became leader of the NDP. So
And then Prime Minister. It was a very fast transition from I have no clue what I'm doing to now I'm in charge of 17 people.
That's great. I love it. And that's how it happens.
That
Oh,
was
that's
the one
awesome.
party.
So are you guys all going into political science?
Yeah, I know me and James are going in the same program actually at Ottawa,
Cool.
the poli-sci co-op.
Right on. Congratulations. Tyler?
I got to do grade 11. Tyler wasn't very active in school, so I have to do another year. So
Sure.
and
Why
then
not?
and then I'm hoping to get into RMC.
Oh, good for you. Great. We used to have a girl that worked at the store. And she went to RMC and she is now a spy.
That's a very
Isn't that cool?
odd career progression. Works at
I
the toy
know.
store, now a spy.
I know. It's amazing.
Yeah.
She's with thesis. And so I said to her, I said, so come on, tell me what you do. She's like, yeah, I can't. She goes, I go to an office. It's, it's technology. That's about it. She's a spy. It's so cool. Probably listening to us right now. Anyway, yeah, this has been great, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much
so
for
much
coming
for
on.
coming on. Yeah, we really love having different opinions. This is our first time where we have had someone who isn't like actively within the Conservative Party, so that's awesome.
It's been
Cool.
a very heavy conservative tilt. So having someone who's pretty nonpartisan is a nice change of pace.
Yay! That's great. Well, if I can help in any way, just please, James, you've got my email now. Just reach out to me if you want those contacts or whatever.
Okay.
I'm happy to lead you to them.
Awesome, thank you. I'll message Darren first because he kind of organizes these things. He was able to come tonight. But I'll ask him and see if he'd be interested. I'm 100% sure he's going to say yes, but I'll just double check with him first.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and also I got to say, I always love meeting municipal politicians because I always find that they always tell the truth, and you didn't disappoint. So thank you.
Oh, good. Well, thank you so much for thinking of me, James, and it's been a pleasure meeting you guys. I wish you
Thank you
all the
very much for
best.
coming.
Thank you so
My
much
pleasure.
for coming on. It's been a pleasure meeting
Thank you. Pleasure meeting you guys too. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
All right, everyone. Thank you for listening. That is our fourth YPC town hall. Our first non-conservative. So that's great. We've had conservative nomination candidate, conservative MP, conservative mayor, conservative candidate, and now a non-conservative, which is good because the conservatives are basically non-existent at this point, so we better start getting some liberals and NDPs. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I'm sorry I accidentally clicked the pause button near the end, but I apologize. I was trying to play around with the settings. Anyway, I hope it didn't cut anything off, but I'm gonna end it now. Thank you guys for coming.